topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Hey, good afternoon, Houston. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show, where we bring you the finest experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. About 3 or 4 months ago, we started getting your letters, which we read and reply to all letters, asking us how come we don't do a community association show. And it's surprising because our community association show in Florida has been with us for 10 years. It's our biggest show we do throughout the country. And the only reason we just didn't have an opening, we finally got an opening for the Houston area, and we found one of the finest firms in the Houston area with Lang and Associates, and we have got Shannon Lang. Good afternoon, Shannon.
Hi, Steve. Thanks so much. Appreciate that introduction.
How about that for an opening? No, but we got a letter right after the show that someone had just found your show who's a board member, and he is going to get his board to start making we're going to send him the dates of each one of your shows each month, but they want to all be there to listen to your show on iHeartRadio, which I thought was wonderful. Tell people about Lang and Associates.
Sure. Thanks so much. We are a boutique firm in Houston. I come from a traditional kind of big firm background. I went to the University of Virginia Law School, worked at an international law firm in DC for a while, came down to Houston and opened this firm in 2016. I've worked as a commercial litigator, but we got involved through a coworker into HOA law. And over the years, it's just really organically grown. We represent homeowners associations and condominium associations throughout the greater Houston area and even into the Hill Country, and have found it to be really rewarding work. We get to work closely with board members. We talk to a lot of homeowners, and feel like we can have a real impact on things that are very important to people, their homes. We pride ourselves in providing craft.
I have learned over the last 10 years, there is so much for a board to know about. It's almost like running a major corporation.
It really is, particularly for our boards that are in master plan communities. I mean, when you've got 4,000 homes and a multi-million-dollar budget, there's a lot on your plate, and having professional service providers makes all the difference. And our boards are really under microscope, which is always important to keep in mind.
Let's get started. We've got so many questions for you today. Does a HOA have a reserve study, and what is the difference between a current reserve funding status?
So reserve studies are pretty important, particularly for communities that have a lot of amenities. And the purpose of those is you get professional advisors who can come out, take a look at your infrastructure, things like your swimming pools and perhaps your drainage facilities, or if you've got shared plumbing, roofs, whatever your community assets are, and can give an opinion as to what the lifespan looks like and how much money it's going to take to maintain and or replace when the time comes. And with that evaluation, the board is able to make some good calculations about what they need to be putting into a reserve fund, which is essentially a savings account for future amenity updates, and then what assessments should look like. And we think these are really critical, particularly for condominiums that have so many maintenance obligations, to help members understand what the real costs of ownership are. Because the challenge we have with so many of our communities, and particularly with homeowners and particularly with condos, is that a lot of the cost of living in these communities is sort of hidden in the shared ownership structure. So, when you have your own house, you're going to have to put a roof on it at some point. And a lot of people plan for that. But when you're in a condo, you figure, well, the condo is going to put the roof on. And you don't really think about the fact that you still have to save for that. And so we like reserve studies because they make sure, if you're doing it right, that there's enough money there when the time comes. The alternative is that these owners get hit with a special assessment, and those are never popular. And usually it's the board that has to implement them that gets punished, which is a shame because it's really the culmination of many years of bad fiscal planning. So we generally recommend regular reserve studies, at least every 10 years for a lot of these communities, so that you know that you're on track. And then good messaging to the community as to what these studies tell you, what it means for assessments, and why there's so much money in reserves. We hear all the time, like, why are you raising assessments? We've got $300,000 in reserves. But your reserves aren't your operating fund. They're your future expenditure fund. And they're often also there to pay a deductible in case of an insurance claim. In Houston, property insurance is extraordinarily expensive for condominiums and for homeowners associations. Condo insurance, much as it is in Florida, Steve, is just outrageously expensive. And one way that it's being placed now is with very high deductibles. So it's always important that an association has money set aside in the event of a casualty loss. And reserves can be a good place to put that money.
We just got our first text. This is from Marvin. And he said, I just found your show last month. I'm so glad there is a show out there like this. We are coming upon hurricane season. I am a new resident of association. Will you be doing a show on hurricanes? It's kind of a good question.
Yeah. Hurricane season is a big deal, particularly, again, for condos or for any subdivision where the association is responsible for the roofs and, for the siding in some respects. And if you're in a flood zone. So this goes back to the issues we're really having with insurance. And one thing I would advise all board members and members in general to do is take a close look at that insurance coverage and make sure that it's offering everything it should. We find way too frequently, again, especially with condominiums, that because the premium costs have skyrocketed so much in the last few years, that boards have, either because of money or bad advice or whatever, have gotten insurance that doesn't really cover everything it needs to cover. And if you've got a big loss in a hurricane, that can be pretty devastating. It goes back to what I said. If there's no money to pay for repairs, the members are going to get hit with a massive special assessment. But preparing for hurricanes are a big deal here. Beyond that, we think the management companies are always well served by having hurricane preparedness messaging that can go out to the community. And if you're in a flood zone, to be particularly cognizant of weather reports and things that are coming in to try to mitigate damage.
Shannon, we're here. Our show is live right now. We're out of Florida. And like I said, we have a big community association show here. We also have one in Los Angeles. And I don't know if the same thing is going on in Texas right now, but people are freaking out here in Florida because of these reserves, these studies they have to do because of the buildings falling down, basically. And so many people lost their lives. And then the same thing happened in Los Angeles with the fires. People are very concerned about their insurance companies packing up and leaving.
Yep. It's a real concern here. We have seen a real exit from the Gulf Coast marketplace of insurers willing to insure condominiums in particular. Subdivisions are easier, but still expensive. And as the number of insurers are leaving the market, the premiums continue to go up. So, we remind people that if you were to take your assessments over 12 months and compare them to what you'd be paying as a single family resident, you're still, on par, but it can be hurt. It can hurt to suddenly know that you've got to be paying $750 to $1,200 a month in condo assessments. But that's really what it's taking these days. The insurers are fleeing the market and they're looking for lots of reasons not to cover. They're not covering replacement cost, which does you no good if your 10-year-old roof is the one that gets torn off and you only get 50% of the value for it. So again, we're not required to do reserve studies in Texas like I believe they are in Florida, but we do recommend it so that there is a backstop. And we recommend that any board that is concerned about their insurance coverage, make sure they're working with a really good agent. All the time, we have board members who see these premiums come in and think, well, that's insane. $200,000 in premium. My guy at Farmers can get us a better deal. But your guy at Farmers probably isn't familiar enough with the intricacies of condo to get you the policy you really need. So we recommend, again, really good service providers and asking a lot of questions with your insurance agents as to what their specific experience is with HOA, where they're shopping, and are they shopping in the London markets, which is often where we're finding coverage these days.
We got a text from a board member. I'm in Houston today. I saw your promotion about your association show. I like what I hear so far. I'm wondering if you're expert, how far out does their firm represent associations? I guess they mean, are you strictly in the Harris County area? How far out do you go?
We go out pretty far. We have clients in Houston, Fort Bend, Brazoria, Galveston, Polk, San Jacinto. We just signed a community up in Rockwell outside of Dallas. And then we have a bunch of acreage communities in the Hill Country. So all the way out towards and past Austin. Depending on need. I mean, if you've got a community with heavy collections and lots of court appearances, having us travel makes very little sense. But for a lot of communities, they really just need a lot of advice and policy making that doesn't require us to be anywhere in person. So we're always happy to talk to any community in the state of Texas, and we will definitely let you know if we don't think it's cost effective for us to be your association attorney because of travel costs. Luckily, these days, most court things are happening remotely.
You know what? I got to get this question in. It's such an important question, especially people who are listening to the show. Customer service is very important at the Lang and Associates, because people want to know if they've got a problem, that if they have to leave a message that you're going to get back with them.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when we talk to boards, we tell them what we think really sets us apart from our competitors is, one, that we actually try cases. I'm a general commercial litigator. I try cases. I go to court all the time, and we're not scared of it. And so that means that we don't just collect debt. If you've got a vendor concern or an issue with your management company or an inter-board squabble, we will help. But with your homeowners, we don't represent the homeowners. We don't represent the board. We represent this association as an entity.
Right.
But we want a calm board, and we want members who have faith in their board. And so for us, it's important to answer the phone. And we tell everyone, what really sets us apart is we answer the phone. You will get a live person. You're not going to get a phone tree. And in the rare occasions when we're all on the phone and you get our voicemail, we call back. Our boards are important to us, and we don't let those things linger. But importantly for homeowners, because they get someone on the phone right away, we're very solution oriented. And so hopefully that homeowner is only going to have to talk to us once. They'll call, they'll be in collections, or they'll have a deed restriction issue, and we will work with them on that call to solve it the best way we can. Get them on and off the phone, and they'll hopefully have some faith that their boards are making good decisions and choosing service providers that are trying to make their lives better, not making this the worst interaction we've ever had with a lawyer. I mean, I don't like talking to lawyers either, so why would a homeowner?
Shannon, is there a big difference in Houston? Is there a big difference between HOA and condo associations?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think by HOA you mean subdivisions. There's two categories for residential. There's subdivisions and there's condos. A lot of people think townhouses have something to do with that, but you can have a subdivision comprised of townhouses or a subdivision comprised of condos. The key is whether you've got shared ownership of the common elements. In a condominium, you're going to own an undivided interest in all of the common elements, meaning basically everything from the drywall out in the community. And that shared ownership structure is what really defines a condominium. Whereas in a subdivision, you're largely going to own your entire structure from foundation to roof. You're going to be responsible for insuring it, maintaining it, and fixing it. And then what your homeowners association does is provide general upkeep with appearance and deed restrictions, the aesthetics of the community, and then you might have amenities, a pool, a clubhouse, private roads, a gate, some common area landscaping, and things like that. And that's what you're paying for. But there's a world of difference between the two. There's different laws governing condos versus subdivisions, and we're constantly educating on this because even amongst management companies, we often see kind of this fallback to just using the subdivision rules for everybody. But condos operate very differently, and the condo boards have a lot more authority generally than a subdivision board does.
The reason I also want is we love getting your questions. We thank you for taking the time to send them to us. Just let us know if you're an HOA or condo. Shannon, can a person see the HOA's latest financial statements?
Absolutely. Whether you're in a subdivision or a condominium, you've got a legal right to access to the financial books and records of the association. And that doesn't just include financial statements. You can and should be given access to, and they might be redacted to prevent the disclosure of confidential information, but bank statements and general ledgers, check registers, and the things like that. You as a member of an association should be able to see all the dollars coming in and all the dollars going out. Now, you won't be able to see who necessarily has paid the dollars coming in. There are some confidentiality protections for the names of your neighbors, but the dollars you should be able to see in and out. We recommend that our clients make those things as available as possible. A lot of them, management companies, use a portal, so it's very easy to see this information. But if not, you have a legal right to request it. If you're in a subdivision, it's in Chapter 209. If you're in a condominium, it'll be in Chapters 81 or 82. But broadly, you send a letter by certified mail to the management company and specify what it is you're looking for. Now, one place we see issues is that there's, this belief that every single document is a document of the association. If you go in asking for every email the board members have ever sent to each other, you're unlikely to get that. But what you can always get are meeting minutes, your governing documents, your financial records, insurance information, and audit records for your condo, which are similar to your financial records. And those are available to everybody. If your management company or the board refuses it, there's a remedy available through the JP courts, which are our local small claims courts, where you can go in and fairly quickly get an order from the court requiring those records to be turned over and requiring the association to pay your costs and fees for having to pursue that.
If there is painting done and hurricane shutters have to be removed to do the painting, who is responsible for the cost of putting those shutters back up?
That's going to depend on what your governing documents provide. In a subdivision, it's almost certainly going to be on you. The association probably has no control or maintenance obligations over the exterior of your building, but that isn't always the case. We represent some subdivisions where the association handles exteriors. For a condo, the painting is almost certainly a condominium responsibility, and so they would have to do the painting. With any of these, you would want to look in your governing documents, your declaration in particular, and see what it says about who's responsible for this area of the community. And it's usually laid out pretty clearly, but if there's open questions, I would start by asking your management company, and hopefully you get a pretty good answer there. But generally speaking, if you're responsible for painting, you're responsible for all the costs of painting. And if you're not responsible for painting, you don't have to do any of it.
Well, this is a great question that just came in. This is from the Meyerland. Is there a city called Meyerland?
There is.
They want. I am really enjoying your show. I'm thinking about running for my board. What makes for a good board member's background?
Fundamentally, I think it's a willingness and enthusiasm to serve. It's so hard to get people to run for the board. And I think part of that is because there's this misconception that it becomes your second job. If you've got good service providers, this should not be a second job. But you do have to have some willingness to dedicate time. If you have a background in construction, it can be helpful. If you have a background in accounting, sure, that could be helpful. But we find that the best board members are the ones who really want to be there, the ones who are open-minded, work well with others, and can accept that they're not going to win every vote. Our boards that work well together respect each other, even if they don't like each other, and they're willing to speak with one voice to the community. We think that's really the most important thing. Our communities in crisis are generally comprised of board members who are real driven by ego, who can't accept when they're on the losing side of a vote, who use social media as a weapon to bash their fellow board members. And we rarely see good things come out of that. We generally find that homeowners hate the drama. They hate feeling like they're living in a daytime TV show, and they hate seeing a board that can't get along. They just want to know that their money is being well protected and well spent. And when you're on Facebook talking about how stupid everyone on the board is, it does not engender any real optimism or support, even for you, amongst members. So if you're looking to run for the board, your willingness to do it, I think, is the biggest thing. Like I said, we struggle every election season to get people to run for these boards, and the roles are so important.
I am really excited about this show. Every time I've looked for podcasts, all the HOA condo shows are in completely different states and have nothing to do with the Houston area. I'm in the Galleria area. Thank you for bringing a show like this. My question is, can a association have too many insurance claims and it causes our insurance company to drop us?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And it happens all the time. This is the rub. If you live in an area of the city where you're prone to storm damage and flooding, you're going to have claims, and it's going to be harder and harder to get insurance. With property claims, we generally want to take a look at what the claim is. If it's relatively small, certainly if it's less than your deductible, then that's not something we would go to our carrier for. Where we really see issues is on the liability side. We have communities where people are very litigious, and there's lots of lawsuits, and often frivolous, brought against boards and board members. But the more claims that are asserted, the harder it is to get insured later. And that goes back to kind of where we started about wanting to be nice and respectful and communicative with owners, because an angry owner can haul off and file a baseless lawsuit, but you still have to defend it, and you still have to report it, because why wouldn't you? That's why you have insurance. And when you've got a lot of homeowners who use litigation as a weapon like that, getting insurance in the future is going to be very expensive. And with property claims, it's hard. It really is. There's just so few carriers left in the market. The premiums this year have gone up less than we were expecting, so there's some hope that with a couple years of good weather, that maybe things will start to turn around. But we certainly would ask that boards think carefully about risk mitigation, look for areas where the increased likelihood of a claim exists, try to mitigate that. For example, if you know that people are speeding a lot in your community, then maybe look into some speed or some traffic calming solutions. If you know that you've got a lake that's prone to flooding, bring in an expert to give you some advice as to how to mitigate that. Because insurance is really difficult, and particularly in a condo, you don't have a choice not to be insured. And if you're not properly insured, you can't get a mortgage. So it's really serious.
Shannon, I knew the show was going to be a hit. We didn't even get to half the questions I have for you. The good news is you're going to be on with us in a couple of weeks. We missed your show last month. We did run a replay. You're going to be back with us in a couple of weeks. Tell people how they can reach your office, Shannon.
Absolutely. We're on the internet, shannonlanglaw.com, and you can find our phone number there. It's also scrolling along the bottom. But call anytime. Like I said before, we answer the phone and we're happy to talk to boards. And, I'm always happy to hop on a call for a few minutes with the board. We don't necessarily charge for that, just to get a sense of what's going on, whether you want us to meet your broader community. So don't hesitate. You can also always reach us by email at info@shannonlanglaw.com.
Well, when it comes to community association law, the Lang and Associates, they are the best in the Harris County area. Again, they'll be back with us in 2 weeks. You can go to iHeart and listen to this show again. You can play it for your board. It's under Community Association Law, Houston, under Ask the Experts. Shannon, thank you so much. This is such an easy show. It goes by fast. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Shannon. God bless. That's Shannon Lang of Lang and Associates. They are our community association law firm. Thank you for all your questions today. We'll be back again with you next week with more experts and Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.